interviewing Miss Cline, Miss Beverly Cline, and today is February 15th, 2011, and we are at 415 Newman Street, and the time is exactly 1:43 p.m. How you doing today, Mrs. Cline?
Fine, thank you.
Start off, just want to know, were you born in Mansfield?
Yes, I was. I was born right there on Orange Street, 319 Orange Street.
Okay. Why did your family settle in Mansfield? Like,
Wow. My mother was a preacher's child, and he moved here. Her parents moved here from Alliance, Ohio, via Selma, Alabama. And my father was born here via Pennsylvania. And they were very, very young when they moved here in 1924.
did you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I am the youngest of 9. Had 5 brothers and 3 sisters, and there are 4 of us living today.
What was your life? What was life like in your family?
Well, it was often said and often told to me as I was growing up that I was labeled the quiet one because I didn't talk much, because all of them ahead of me would talk, and I didn't have a chance to talk. But as I say, I was born and raised on Orange Street at 319 Orange Street. Went to kindergarten at the Friendly House when it was on Main Street. And then I went to Newman School, which is yet on Central Avenue, and I was the first grader in the first class when the building was first built. And then from Newman to Simpson to senior high. And I would say 20 to 30 years later, I went to college and achieved a associate's degree in early childhood education. And in between that time, married, had 3 children, divorced and married again, had 3 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren now. And I enjoyed children. Like I said, I did child care. I also worked at Westinghouse. I also worked at the post office as a substitute mail carrier, rural mail carrier. And I enjoyed that. Growing up in Mansfield, living in this neighborhood, it was basically Germans. There were very few blacks in this neighborhood. And in school, there were very few blacks then. Yet they were bused from the company line. But I had very few black friends until I went to church. And I met more people there than I did in my neighborhood. Many of them I still have a few friends who I grew up with. People say it was hard. I didn't see it as being hard because I was sheltered. I felt like, yeah, I had 5 brothers and 3 sisters, but I was a loner, stayed at home a lot. I just didn't go out. I did, as a teenager, I did go to the Friendly House. We used to have the dances, the teenage dances. I would go there. Roller skating. My mom used to be the coat checker at the Coliseum, at the first Coliseum, which there had been 2 since then because the 2 got burnt down. But the first Coliseum, every Monday night, we'd go skating. That's how I learned how to skate really well. And my mom checked coats then. Speaking of my mother was a musician at Mount Calvary Baptist Church for 47 years. She was a musician there. She told me when I was younger, said I had started singing when I was 3 years old. She said I'd just be around the house humming. And singing became a very crucial part of my life. I love to sing, and I love to be in choirs and what have you, and have been in such. played for the Mount Calvary Baptist Church myself for about 7 or 8 years. Played for the children's choir, played for the senior choir, and now I'm a member of Charlottesville Gospel Baptist Church and in and out playing for the children's choir, which I hope to get back with it soon. Again, living in Mansfield, this is home to me. People say, oh, how can you live in Mansfield? I live in it, I'm a part of it, and I don't let the politics of it get to me. This is my home. I've been here for 42 years in this house. Raised my children, my grandchildren, and now my great-grandchildren. This is home, and I feel like whatever happens outside, it's not happening to me. And if I'm not a part of it, I don't let it bother me. I don't let it affect me.
Okay. Where did your parents work?
My mother was a housekeeper. She worked for a doctor who delivered all of us. Dr. Keller lived on North Mulberry Street, and he delivered all 9 of us. And I was delivered at home there on Orange Street. She also worked for another school teacher, Mrs. Hess. Housekeeping. She kept their house. And she also cleaned for the rabbi of the Jewish temple. That's the type of work she did. My father was a mechanic. He worked at Moorheads. It was Moorheads, where the old telephone company is on West 2nd Street. That's where he worked at Moorheads. So that's my beginnings.
So kind of going back to the school thing, are there any teachers you remember especially well?
Yes. My kindergarten teacher, I feel, is my mentor, who was Mrs. Gimble, Mary Gimble, who was the founder of the Friendly House. And it was just something in her that I want to be like her. And I remember my first grade teacher, Mrs. Wolf at Newman School, and my 6th grade teacher, who was also the wife of the doctor who my mother worked for. And I think 4 or 5 of us had her as a 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Keller. She was our 6th grade teacher. Grade school, I liked grade school more than junior and senior high. I just did. I guess it was like we could walk to school, and we didn't have to have transportation because it was within the neighborhood. And that's my grade school experience.
Were you involved in any activities in school?
In school? Not until junior high. Like I said, I was in the choir concerts, choir contests, which we always came out with A's or A plus or double A's. It was a good choir then. The teachers, the music teachers again. I remember my 7th grade, 8th grade teacher, Mrs. Severson, very good music teacher. And then in senior high, it was A. Lemoyne Durer. I'm sure many older people will remember him. Had the best choirs. His son taught for a while. Can't remember his name right now. I can see his face, can't think of his name. But his choirs were very good too. Again, like I say, singing was just a part of my growing up and part of my life today.
So you said you didn't get into any sports? Did you get into sports?
No, I didn't get into any sports, no. And I think being that my parents split up when I was very young, and Mom didn't drive, so if I went anywhere, I would have to have walked. And walking from here to senior high, that's a little long ways. So I didn't participate in any sports, no.
You said you attended college, right?
Yes.
You said the Mansfield business?
No, NC State.
NC State?
Well, it was NCTC at the time. Yes.
Well, so what was your first job?
My very first job, babysitting, of course. I babysat, and that began with the children. Well, prior to that, in the neighborhood was somebody always had a baby, and I was always there. And I won't mention any names, but changing diapers and just being around children, that just, I don't know, just was my forte, and I just love being around children. My very first job, paying job, well-paying job, was at Mansfield General at that time, Med Central. I don't remember how much I was paid, but and how I got the job was a really true story, because they called the house looking for my cousin, Betty Cline, and I had just graduated high school. And my mom said, well, there's no Betty Cline here, but there's a Beverly Cline here, and she needs a job. So they said, well, we'll try her, because when I graduated, I was 17 years old. They said, we'll try her, and if she works out, we'll give her a job. So I went for the 3 weeks training in nurses aid training, and I worked there for 15 years. Mm-hmm. And off and on, between having my children, the head of nursing would tell me, if you need a job, call me. So evidently I must have worked out. Mm-hmm.
So, what was the neighborhood like growing up? What was it like?
Growing up, I can remember on Orange Street there were 5 houses on Orange Street. The house that I was brought up in is torn down now. But that garage there, my brother built that garage because he wanted to have a business with my other 2 brothers. And he built the garage, and he thought they were going to have a car wash and mechanic, because that's what they were brought up in, because that was what my father had done. Well, the brothers didn't want to do it, and he bought them out, and he kept the garage. But that building is still there. But the other 4 houses, there were children lived in those houses, and the children that I grew up with, those were the main people that I played with at the time of growing up, because I didn't go too far away from home. I'd ride my bike up and down Orange Street, and I would go on 2nd Avenue. That's about as far as I would go, down 2nd Avenue, because the 2nd Avenue hill was a nice hill to ride your bike down. But other than going any place else, I just stayed around the house.
What were the stores and restaurants in the neighborhood? Were there any local ones?
Stores?
Any that's not here now?
Stores that I can remember, one grocery store was on the corner of Orange and Central Avenue. And the owner was Frank Mitch. And it was a grocery store that you could, we'd run down there, get things just like you do, maybe going to, how can I say, Save-A-Lot. It was on a smaller, scale, but it was similar to Save-A-Lot. And then there was then there on 3rd Avenue, there was Frisch's Market. That was another market. But again, like I say, this neighborhood, basically 1st, 2nd, 3rd, all the way up to, I would say 4th or 5th Avenue, basically were Germans. A lot of Germans in this neighborhood. Very few blacks were in this neighborhood. Trying to think. Well, another store would have been coming on down this way, on the corner of Grace and Wayne, was Zempke Market. And many people, I'm sure, would remember Zempke's Market. The main thing I remember about Zempke's, he would always have a hog head, the whole hog's head, on the counter. For whatever reason, because I guess he made hog head cheese, but he put before he would cut it up, he'd have that hog sitting up on the counter. But that's one thing I do remember. But there were other little stores, like the store we would go to, the handy store we would go to, going to school, stop at on the way to school, or Such's Market. Those were the only ones that I can remember. The Dairy Queen's been there for ages. The one up on the corner, that's been there forever. The DQ has not been there as long as the Dairy Queen, because we would go to Liberty Park and then you come up and get you some ice cream and go back down to the park. But DQ has not always been over there on National Road. It's, I would say 15 years, 20 years maybe. I'm not quite sure. But that's basically because, like I say, I was and yet a homebody. I didn't go out and basically was going to church and home. Didn't go visiting a whole lot. But that's how I grew up. And other work experiences, like again I say, I was substitute rural mail carrier, and I carried mail out in Ontario, Galleon, Touch, Shelby, Crestline, and I enjoyed that. The only bad thing about it, being a substitute, of course you're going to get called on the bad days. But I learned 3 routes. And sometimes I go on these roads and I say, this looks familiar. It would be an old route that I had run. Again, I worked at Westinghouse for 6.5 years. I enjoyed working there, being on the assembly line. It was hard in the beginning because they always give the new people the hardest jobs. Oh my goodness. My fingers, get cut up and tore up, from the different parts you had to put together. And but it was a means of income. Yeah.
Now, pardon me.
Sure.
The neighborhood that you grew up in, was it? You know how we just talked a little bit ago about the North End.
Right.
Was this considered? I mean, what did you identify the neighborhood any particular way, or?
This east side. The east side. It was not the North End because, again, like I say, I guess looking back, the railroad tracks separated us, from Bowman Street area, from the east side. Because this would be, like 2nd Street would be on, like again, across the tracks. So I don't know how people perceived us, because again, I did not get into, gang type things or, confrontations or what have you. So this was, to me, was the east side.
Okay, just curious
Yes.
in terms of the way people identify with their own neighborhoods.
Right.
Just to clarify for my own
Yes.
purposes. But
Right. Yeah, so that's how it was.
Excuse my interruption.
No,
That's
that's
okay. Uh-huh.
Oh, just a quick one. When did you work at the Westinghouse? Do you remember what years those were?
What was they closed down in 90. I was there the last day the last machine went off the line. That would have been my half year. After 6.5 years. Yeah. Can you remember? Because I graduated in 92, so it had been 90, 91 in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
how is it different today?
The neighborhood?
Yeah, everything.
The neighborhood now? Again, I live in my house, but the neighborhood has gone down. From what I can tell, and this is from my perception, and maybe I may be wrong, on Newman Street, it is mostly rental properties. There are very few homeowners on this street. To say 5, I would say, I may be saying 1 or 2 too many. Most of these are rental properties. I've seen, I've been here 43 years this March. This house next door, when I moved in here, the elderly lady who lived here, she was in her 90s then, and she said her husband built these 2 houses. And that one day I sat down and I counted how many people had moved in and out of that house next door. And I said, and I'm still here. But for the grace of God. But I mean, it's just how people, can't get settled. And I've seen family after family after family after family in and out. This one house. This neighborhood, it has gone down. It has gone down considerably because, well, I don't know why. Again, the people who lived in these houses in the beginning when I was here were owners of the houses. So they cared for their houses, you know, took pride in their houses. Being that they're rental properties, people don't care about the homes. It's a place for them to have a roof over their head, but they don't care about what's around them, you know. But it hasn't. I thought that before Mansfield Tire went out, I thought they would buy up these houses, you know. So, oh yeah, they're gonna buy, you know. That didn't happen. They left before I did. But I don't plan to go anywhere, and I like staying here unless something happens.
What was life like for African Americans in Mansfield, like in the 1940s and 50s?
Well, I was born in 43.
Mm.
I'm 67 years old now. In the 50s, I was just coming up through kindergarten, grade school. My grade school experience, and I still have, for lack of better wording, Caucasian friends. I mean, we grew up together. You know, kindergarten, first grade, junior and senior high. I still have friends, and I had one friend who is you all's supporter, the Rupp Foundation, Sharon. We graduated together. And going to school, we were not allowed to visit, communicate. But she told me one day, it's been about 10 years ago. She's a photographer in Connecticut. She called me, and it surprised me. I mean, me, little old me. And she called me. She says, "Can I come over?" Sure, you know, my house is open. She came over and she sat down. She talked. She says, "When we were growing up, I never would have been able to do this." I said, "Probably not, but you're more than welcome to come anytime you're in Mansfield." And she has called me when she comes to visit her mom, or we write, you know, converse back and forth. And this year we're getting ready for our 50th class reunion. Thank God. So hoping to see her. I haven't seen her since the last one, or what would that have been?
45?
45. 45th class reunion. We're going for the 50th
Yeah.
this year, so maybe I'll get to see her. But basically, I didn't see a lot of the segregation, the controversial things that people talked about, because I'm a people person. Your skin doesn't matter to me. If we can get along, if we can converse and, you know, agree to disagree, I'm fine. You know, I don't like confrontation, so I'm not gonna make you angry with me, and hopefully you won't make me angry with you. And again, like I say, like with Sherry, it surprised me that she felt that the way that she felt about me, and she wanted to be friends. But because of her parents and her upbringing and her living all the way out there, she couldn't come across the tracks. But when she was able to come across the tracks, we're people. We're people just like you.
Was that pretty common then? Was that a lot? I mean, was that going on quite a bit where they wouldn't let people mingle?
Oh, right. Oh, definitely. Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of that, when my sister, who, again, like I say, became the valedictorian, they did not like that at all. They did not think the school system, you know, they didn't build it up like they do for for other people. But it happened. She was the smartest one there. Not patting myself on the back, but she just was.
I'm sorry to
Yes.
interrupt. Can you restate that for the camera in terms of, because we didn't get that piece when you told us about your sister. If you could just tell us about her.
When she became the valedictorian, they did not like it at all. For whatever reasons, I don't know, they did not build her up like they should have or could have at the time. It's like just, so she is. So she's a valedictorian, kind of passed it off. But it was what it was. And she went on to become a doctor. She has since passed away. But she got her doctorates and had a counseling business out in Colorado. So she went on and did her thing.
Do you remember what year that was that she graduated?
She graduated in 1960.
1960.
Yes, from Mansfield Senior High. Yes.
And her name was?
Karen Patricia Klein Lane. Yes.
So you say you felt like racial bias did affect you?
It didn't, because I didn't allow it to. Again, like I say, people are people. And if I just don't feel like it did bother me.
Did you ever experience anything else? I mean, that's a great example with what happened to your sister.
Mm-hmm.
But did you ever have any stories about anybody treating you differently or?
No, because I was again, I was not an outgoing person to involve myself to the point where I would have to be, shown difference, and maybe it was, and I just didn't. I can't put it into words.
Just didn't really acknowledge it.
Right, or just
Pay
didn't.
attention.
Yeah, didn't. Hey, so
Right,
just let it go.
So what about the civil rights movement, like in the 60s and things
In
like
the 60s,
Did that
I was
affect
in
you?
a junior in high school when she graduated. Again, I did things with my friends, but I didn't I didn't let it bother me. And if I did, I just don't remember it. I just didn't let the circumstances around me affect how I did. I guess I'm going to do what I'm going to do and hope it doesn't bother anybody else. That's just how I perceive it now. And it may have been different again, but things were going on around me, I'm sure, but I just didn't. Just like the things that are going on now today, I can't do anything about it. If I can, I will, but if I can't, I have to let it go.
So tell me about your church. What is the role of your church in the community?
Okay, the church I belong to, again, is Shiloh Full Gospel on East 2nd Street, and Bishop William Morris Jr. is my pastor. The church, as I see it, we have programs that involve the community. I don't feel like we are reaching outside of the building. We have programs there. We have the feeding program, the Feed the Hungry program, and clothing program. If you are in need, you can come, you can call, But for us going out to the people, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. We could and should do better, reaching out to help, let people really, let them see you face to face, to see that, yes, we are here to help you. If you need our help. We try our youth. We have a very, very good youth program. Somehow, it's not touching. Well, I guess you can't touch everybody, but the ones that they are touching, I think it's a beautiful program. Again, it needs to be outside of the four walls. Yes, they do beautiful in the services, but the services need to extend, who are you touching outside of these four walls? That's all I can perceive. I don't see any. Again, I'm here in my house. I do what I can do from here.
What about in the past, growing up?
Okay.
You said you went to a different church.
Yes, I was a member at Mount Calvary.
Mount Calvary.
I was born and raised in Mount Calvary because my grandfather before me was a minister there. My mother was a pianist there for 47 years, like I say, 48 years.
What were their names? Is there,
My grandfather was Reverend H.H. Tigg. He was a pastor there. I can't tell how many years. And before they were on Main Street, they were on Wayne Street, which is just over the way there. And he was a pastor there, and he also was a pastor at the church I am with now, at Shiloh. But there at Mount Calvary, I was there for 52 years before it's like, I won't say something because I know it wasn't something, it was the Lord told me, it's time for you to move. and I left and have been at Shiloh ever since. But at Mount Calvary, at the time, I think Reverend Johnson, Archie Johnson was there. And there were some programs coming along, but it wasn't like, I just had a feeling like, this is not the place for me. This is just not the place for me. I need growth. And I was not feeling it there. I felt stale. You know, like I'm at a stalemate. I'm not getting what I need. I'm not being fed spiritually. So the Lord said, well, it's time for you to go. And I left.
So do you remember as a kid, some of the other ladies we talked to talked about going to church and how they would go to all different churches on Sunday? Was that something you ever did as a young kid?
Visiting, when they would have programs, they would invite the different churches and children to come to the programs. Yes, I was a part of the children's choir. Then grew up to do all the children's choir, the teenage choir, the adult choir. On Sunday evenings we would have it's called a BTU, Baptist Training Union. We would go back to that in the evening time. Again, I was baptized in Mount Calvary, in the old Mount Calvary. That is not the old Mount Calvary. That's the newer Mount Calvary. The old Mount Calvary used to be the Masons building, and it was kind of a scary building to go into. But that's where we worshiped for ages. I can't remember how long. I know I was 9 years old when I was baptized there, but by Reverend Robinson. But I was involved with church groups, the Baptist Training Union, and then when I got older, again, like I said, I played for the children's choir, which was a Julia Turner choir, children's choir with Mrs. Latimer. Catherine Latimer was in charge of that, and we would go to different conventions with the children. We would always go to Worcester or go to Cleveland, Akron, because that was our district, and we would go to the district meetings, and just that kind of thing. It was with the church. That's basically where I went. Yes.
So do you think the church was like the same as it was back then growing up as it is now, or do you think the values kind of changed along the way?
I don't think the values have changed. People change. The value of the church is the same. It's how people perceive it and how they act upon it. I've learned a lot since I have gotten older and changed to under a different pastorship, for lack of better wording. I've learned more about me and how I should live my life, and not to live my life through someone else. But again, like I said, the values of the church have not changed for me. It's how it has been perceived and how it has been presented to me in particular.
So can you tell me about your fondest memories of growing up in Mansfield?
Fondest memories of growing up. This is my son, Terry.
Hello, Terry.
Going to work.
Excuse me.
Alrighty. Growing up. What were the best years for me? I can remember when I was a little girl, living on Orange Street. And in this house, there was an attic. And after all my brothers and sisters grew up, and it was just me and my mother and the sister that's next to me, Karen, who was the valedictorian, because she was 2 years older than me. But she would always go out. She would always go find someplace to go, somebody to be around. And I was like I say, a homebody. So I would stay home and I would play in the attic with my dolls. Just be by myself. That's what I enjoyed more. I guess I just like being by myself. I like being around people, but I like to be by myself even more.
Did you move around the city any?
Growing up?
Yeah.
No, I stayed on Orange Street for 19 years. Because I was married when I was 19. And then I moved. When I got married, and then moved to I did move to Harker Street. I moved to Harker Street and stayed there a year. Then I moved on Adam and stayed there a year. I guess after I got married, that was something else. And then we moved on Junction Street, which is off of Park Avenue. I don't know if you know where Junction Street is. Do you know where Bentley is?
Bentley Street?
Bentley Street, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Bentley would go into Junction off of East 3rd Street.
Oh,
Okay, it's that little street.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
I stayed there for 5 years and then moved here. Been here ever since. Like I said, I don't like to move. Packing all this stuff up, I don't think so. No.
Do you have any worst memories or something that happened in the city that you just think back and was like, man, that was pretty bad?
Yes, and it affects me now too. Something happened to the water system. That I don't know something happened at the treatment center or something, the system, and the water started smelling like sewage. They said it's okay to drink. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay. I have not drank water since. I buy my water. I'm sorry to say, but I buy my water. Even if you go in there, I've had a new system put in. But the city water, it leaves something to be desired.
Do you remember what year that was?
I don't remember when it was. Yeah. It's back in the 70s. Because my mother was still living. She passed away in 74. And it was just before then. Because I wouldn't drink water anyway. She said, are you drinking water? No. And after that happened, no. I just can't drink the water. It has an odor to it. And if I can't get past the odor in order to drink the water. I don't know if you all paid any attention to it or not. And I don't want to talk bad about the city, but everybody, I don't know, there was a notice in my water bill about the inspection that they didn't pass. The city didn't pass the inspection. So, I don't know. But I'm not drinking the water. I'll boil my water for coffee, but I will not drink it out of the faucet.
Did they ever say what that was? I mean, was it something they ever explained to you, or they just said water's gonna, be a little funny and just go with it, or?
Kind of like that, yeah. Because to me, it has never been. Since then, it still has that smell to it too, and I can't get past it, and I can't go in there and get a drink of water out of the faucet. I just can't. So I just buy my water. All right, don't type that.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well,
that we haven't covered?
I can't think of anything. If there's anything of interest to you that you might want to ask, I don't know how.
I know some of the other ladies, they were involved in the Friendly House as well. Do you remember, was it segregated when you were there? They were saying that the kindergartens usually were, people were together, and then after that they were split. Is that how they normally did it, or?
Yes. I did. When I went, it was on North Main Street, where the volunteer building is now. And again, I didn't notice all that because we were all together, you know. And the other part, okay, a taxi cab would come and pick us up, take us to kindergarten, and then bring us back home. I just went and enjoyed myself and came back home. As far as being a teenager, okay, the dancing. We could go on Wednesday nights to dance. That was for the blacks. That's the only time we could go down there. To the skating rink, we could go on Monday nights. Then they added Saturday night, and that was midnight. You could go from, I think it was 12 to 2 o'clock in the morning. That's the only time we could go skating. At the Coliseum, again, I'm sure someone mentioned that, the North Lake Park, there was a private pool there. No blacks could go in there. Liberty Park, you couldn't go in there. That's a newer park, the one that's out there off of Millsboro Road. That's a private pool, but now I think they're opening it up, you know, that more people opening it up to the public. I guess when you're not involved and don't do those things, like you don't go swimming, you don't participate in those things, it doesn't bother you. That's how I see it. You know, I wasn't participating in those things, so if that's what they want to do, then let them do that thing. You know, I'm just, I can't get upset. Can't get upset about how someone else feels about a thing, you know, because it didn't bother me. So maybe that might be a bad way to be, but that's how I managed to get through.
So what did your husband do for a living?
My husband worked at Reformatory. Before that, he worked at Pepsi Cola, and then General Motors. Yeah. And he also had the radio station. Had a program on the radio station. I don't know if you might mention that. The Peter Cool Show.
Oh,
My kids could tell you about that.
Please, tell us about it.
What year was that?
This, Terry, you can come and tell them this. I told you that you could be involved.
Oh, God.
Quickly now. About the Peter Cool Show.
Early 70s. My dad was working at the reformatory and had on WMAN on Saturday nights. He had a program called Peter Cool Show. And this is the only thing I really remember. It made the inmates really mad that he would always start his program out with a song from the OJs called For the Love of Money. Because they were tired of hearing it all the time. And it's just stuck in my head, and they would just get so angry when he came into work. Said, "Why you always gotta start that program with that song?" My youngest son, which was me, loved that song. He would always start the program out with that song. He said, "You always talk about money." I'm like, "Well, that's the song that he loved, and there wasn't nothing else I gonna play." Just that would be the recorded song every time when he started this program. And as the years went along, I kept seeing programs, hearing that always had a repeated song that always clicked. It would remind you of what that program would be. Because like now, the Tom Jordan Morning Show, programs like that, they always start out with the same song. So you always remember, whenever you hear that song, you would know that would come on. American Bandstand, Soul Train, all those types of programs. There would always be a repeated song. So you would know Green Acres all the time, Beverly Hillbillies all the time. My dad, I always think that my dad always started that because you could hear it all the time. Whatever program you would listen to, you would relate it to that particular song. That's the way that was. That was the one connection I had with my dad.
Great.
Because he always had a job doing something. Drove a truck. What she said, reformatory, Pepsi Cola. He even made his own car. That's what helped him get into General Motors.
Oh wow.
So he basically did everything. And he was blind in one eye. But his hands were just like incredible.
Huh.
He did a lot of things. He had his own recording studio that he hooked up and had a Touch of Soul. I think back in the 70s they had a group, Touch of Class. They went on and made a little bit of money here and there, but he was a businessman that helped to get them started in the music industry. So my dad did.
Wow.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, did a lot of things. Yep.
Well, great. Thanks for sharing that with us.
That's all cool.
Not a problem.
All right.
Things I had forgotten.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
great.
all I can
So maybe,
remember.
do you have any fond memories of North End? Do you have anything, like any moments that you remember that stuck out to you for that, just the neighborhood in general?
No, because I only lived out on Harker, like I say, it was a year, maybe less than a year. Hit my children's uncle, their dad's uncle, had built the house that we stayed in. After we moved out, he got out of the Air Force and redid the house. The house was immaculate. I mean, had everything in it. But to see that house now, you would think, how could you tear up a house? You know, like I say, people have no respect for property. You know, when it becomes rental, it's not mine, you know, so they just let it go to nothing. The house, I think, is boarded up now. But, no, I don't really remember too much about them. Although my mom lived over there for quite a few years, well, even till she passed away. Had a brother that lived over there. Even he lived over there for a little while, had an apartment over there. But I never really thought about things that happened over there.
Now, what about the company line? Was that something, did you just happen to have that book, or what's your association with the company line?
The busing of the children to Newman School from the company line. Met a lot of people through the company line. And again, like I mentioned, Wyndham, he was I got the book through his mother-in-law, who has since passed away. And again, like I say, he has other books too that could give you more information about the company line. I went out there when it was the company line, just a couple of times. Again, like I said, we didn't have transportation, and Mom didn't drive, and brothers, they had to work, so yeah, I was kind of stuck at home.
Did you ever venture like downtown? I mean, was there any reason to go down that way, or
Downtown,
like
as far
like downtown
as
Mansfield, like?
okay,
Any
downtown
memories
Main
of
Street.
Main Street.
Main Street. I remember quite a bit of Main Street.
Yeah.
Remembering starting from 6th and Main. 6th and Main? Yes. I remember the old Mayor Drug Store on the corner of 6th and Main. Coming up, then were the bars, with the Blue Note and the Green Leaf, and as a teenager, of course, you wanted to go these places, you know. Coming on up the street, as during school years, we could go into Neisner's 5 and 10 cent store.
Where was Neisner's?
Neisner's was Neisner's was, you know where the Carousel is. It's on that side. It was on that side of the street. Okay, the Carousel. Then there's an alley. Then there's a store now, which used to be a clothing store called Grant's, but they sell pots and pans and stuff like that. Okay, the next building was Neisner's. And it was a 5 and dime, and had a counter. You could go ahead and sit down at the counter. We could sit at the counter.
You said you could or couldn't?
Yes, could.
You could.
We could sit at the counter.
Okay.
This was 6:59. Yeah, 10th, 11th,
Now,
12th.
pardon me.
Yes.
Was Neisner's a chain?
I believe so.
Because I
believe
asked
so.
that because Miss Young mentioned Neisner's in Louisville, Kentucky, during the Civil Rights era.
Yeah, I believe so, because Neisner's, and then on up was Kresge's, SS Kresge's, and that was a chain. And I'm not sure if that was a part of Kmart. I think that was, who's coming now?